Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. I am your host, Ray Harkins, and this is episode number 25, and I will let you know the guest a little bit later. But obviously, if you've already downloaded the show, you already know it. It's not like I'm keeping you in suspense. But anyways, the show is brought to you in conjunction with Property of Zach. Visit propertyofzach.com, stop fucking around, and you will get the latest, greatest, awesomest news, interviews, reviews, all about independent music, ranging from, the bands that you would see at Warped Tour, all the way down to, hardcore bands, metal bands, that type of stuff. But the killer feature for me is the sort of editorial stuff that he puts up there on the site. He gets a lot of behind the scenes stuff with bands. And it's interesting for me because, obviously me being older than a average kid in a band these days, it gives me insight to what they are experiencing. And, if this is obviously changed over the years, whether my experience touring in a band is different than what a kid is experiencing currently. So anyways, that's just my own personal enjoyment out of the site. But I'm excited to be partnered with them, and awesome. So let's get some business out of the way. Visit 100wordspodcast.com. That way you will get all of the latest shows as they get posted. If you don't do iTunes and you just want to listen to the shows on a web browser, you can do that, or you can download an MP3 from there. I post them every Tuesday, like I post all the other new episodes on the iTunes store. And speaking of the iTunes store, if you are inclined to help the show out, go there. You will be able to give us some sort of star review, 3 stars, 4 stars, 5 stars. And if you wanted to dive in a little bit deeper, then you can give us a full review. I read all of them, and if I give them digital high fives, I don't know who these people are, because obviously it's just pseudonyms or usernames or whatever you'd like to call it. So anyways, I appreciate that. And on the website as well, we do some, I say me, recommendations on, stuff I've been watching recently, stuff I've been listening to. And it's a fun way to interact with, listeners of the show. So go there. It's the hub for everything. Now, on to the reason that we are doing this 25th episode and why it's a little bit different is the fact that I'm interviewing myself. I just thought it would be interesting for some people to check out, why I'm doing what I'm doing, and kind of how I got involved in, this whole crazy world known as independent music. So I brought on one of my close friends and very good friend of the show and cultural correspondent to the show occasionally, Scott Arnold. I've known him for forever and a day, it feels like. And he always asks, interesting questions. And so basically him and I sat down, he interviewed me, and this is exactly what transpired. The room that we recorded in is very echoey. I apologize if you have to turn up your listening device or turn it up in the car. There aren't a lot of volume peaks, so you're not going to be pissed at me when all of a sudden, like the music comes in. Well, the music will come in at the end of the show, so be prepared because it'll probably be loud if you did turn it up. I'm like overly sensitive about this. I don't want anybody to have a bad listening experience. Anyways, so yeah, the room is a little bit echoey, so it's a little bit quieter than usual, and I apologize for that. But that was the lot that we were dealt. So yeah, here it is. More about me and all the stupid stuff I've done in my life. So there you go. Hopefully you enjoy.
Okay, everybody, welcome. My name is Scott, former co-host of Ray's previous podcast that I was dismissed from.
Readily dismissed from. Scott was bringing absolutely nothing to the table.
Yep. And myself and former co-host Mr. Cahill were unceremoniously dismissed via email. Broke our hearts.
It did not.
So this whole podcast is going to be about that.
This is just going to be one giant hit piece.
Yes.
That's good.
Ray and I have known each other for nearly a decade. Sounds crazy.
That is. Just think that when we're 40, we'll have known each other for 20 some odd years.
Yeah.
Which is nuts.
Yep. We are sitting in an office in Huntington Beach, California.
Yes.
Drinking coffee.
I'm not.
I am.
You are.
And today we are going to reverse the roles of the podcast a bit and learn a little bit about the man behind the microphone.
Very good.
Ray Harkins.
I like how you put that. The man behind the microphone. That's
Welcome,
nice.
Ray.
Well, thank you for having me, Scott. I appreciate you. You did take a vested interest in this, and obviously I appreciate you scheduling this. So
Yes.
Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome. Ray, give me a synthesis of your life the last 10 years.
A synthesis, why would I do that? Because that's, since you've known me, you'd be able to do that roughly. No, I mean, I'm not putting pressure on you to do so.
I'm the one asking the question.
You are. Okay. 10 years of my life. So I'm 31 years old right now. So 21 and up. 21, I was...
At this point, were you still in college at 21?
I think I was doing OCC, just a community college. Totally biding my time, like not really caring about anything that I was doing there. Besides the fun classes like film study and human sexuality, you know, the real fun classes
Babysitting.
Of course. So I was doing that, just dicking around.
Don't get me started.
I know. I think I was, because I went to San Diego State 2000. It's like 99 and 2000. I think that was
1 year?
1 year. Bailed out on that because...
You make it to the end of the year.
I did. My grades weren't that stellar, but...
Did you kick out?
No, I get kicked out. Because basically, for whatever reason, I was really focused on getting a degree in small business. I don't know why, that was just like what I wanted. But Cal Poly Pomona offered that degree, but then I didn't go out there because I didn't want to live in Pomona, because Pomona's a hellhole. No offense to anybody that's listening to the podcast that lives in Pomona. But, then I just went to San Diego State thinking that like every college offered degrees of that nature. But they didn't. And so then I just ended up doing, I can't even remember what, I was just doing general ed, so it didn't matter. I wasn't declaring a major. But I really enjoyed that experience being down there. It was fun. It was a total melting pot of so many different random people. Like I remember my first day, because you had a roommate. You had no fucking clue who this person was supposed to be, or was going to be. So I was terrified. I was like, oh, okay, is this going to be, some total fraternity party dude that I'm going to be like, oh, great, this is going to suck? Or is it going to be some, really weird introverted person like Scott Arnold, where I'd have to take like 6 months to break open some sort of shell and have a community?
I'm not introverted.
You are.
I protect myself.
Okay, you build walls. But, so this dude, I got there first and got my side of the room, set it all up. Dude, you have
Such
to.
a bad start.
No, well, what are you, am I supposed to wait there for hours, not knowing when this dude is going to come by? Anyways.
No, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
You've watched many seasons of The Real World.
I have.
It always goes better for the collective house and the relationships between people if they wait and evenly sort of figure out a way to divide up the rooms.
Here, I would counter that argument with the fact, I agree, for the real...
Granted, you were punctual, and you should be rewarded.
Yes, but this room on both sides was identical. The only difference was one side had the refrigerator, and the other side was blank. So that was literally the only difference.
Did you want the refrigerator?
I did not. I wanted a spot to put like my TV at the foot of my bed. When you think of college dorms, like just imagine.
I think Counter-Strike and
yes,
miserable.
Totally. And these, you felt like you were in a prison ward. Like you didn't walk in and were like, oh, this feels like home. It was like, oh, brick walls, like tile floor, terrible. Yeah. So, anyways, that was why I felt compelled to just make his mind up on where he was staying.
So who was he?
His name was Brian Reckworth.
Okay. He
shows up. First words to me, yo, my name's Brian Reckworth, but you can call me Reck. And I was like, oh shit, this guy's gonna have no idea where I'm coming from, which was the case. But at that time, you're forced to hang out with him because you don't know anybody there. So literally the only thing that we like had a common bond on was the fact that neither of us were going to pledge a fraternity.
Why do you go in school?
What do you mean?
Keep your options open.
I just wasn't interested in that.
Okay.
I mean, would you ever be interested in that?
Depends
what the experience was. There is. But San Diego State notoriously is a party school, and I just wasn't interested in it. So, but then, let's see, fast forward 3 weeks later, he shows up to our room with a fraternity pin, and I was like, hey, what, are you pledging? He said, yeah. And this statement is said by everybody who's ever joined a fraternity ever. Dude, this fraternity isn't like all the others. Like, they're really brothers. They watch out for you. And it was like, just everything that he was saying was like very typical of what a kind of freshman would say about it, which is fine. I mean, he had fun with it, and I'm not going to sit here and judge it and be like.
Did he move into the fraternity?
No, he had to, because freshmen can't, like, I think that's part of the rules. They can't move into the pledge house or whatever. But he spent a lot of time there. And he spent a lot of time passed out on our floor as well.
Yeah.
So I'd walk in after, going to a show and be like, oh, cool, here's my passed out roommate who's snoring. And yeah.
Was there any conflict between you guys?
No, we were cool. We just kind of stayed out of each other's way. And there were very rare occasions where he brought a girl back, and I was like, oh. And he was the fucking filthiest dude ever. So it's like, if a girl did come back and was like laying in his bed, I'm like, I wanted to like tap her on the shoulder and be like, this is filthy. But anyways, so that was and so then I left there to come back home and go to OCC, because at the time, that's when like the band stuff started doing well, and so we kind of
were in the 601 house.
No, I moved back in with my parents. Because I had no desire to move out, because I had a good relationship with my mom and dad, and just was like, well, I can save money by living with them, and they were paying for my school, so I was like, okay, that's fine. And plus OCC is like $4 a credit, yeah, or a unit. It was then. So yeah, moved back in there, and that's what I was doing for that 21, 22 time frame, doing Taken. That was when things were really, I remember doing a lot of calls at OCC campus, like trying to book tours and trying to like get our way onto tours.
I would love to be flying along now.
Oh, it would. I mean, email was obviously still was just starting to pop up from that perspective, but it was still a lot of phone calls. And so anytime, it's like I would get a phone call in the middle of class, and I would just straight up walk out, because I'm like, this is important. Like, we may be able to tour with Darkest Hour. So that was what I was doing at that time.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So we eventually decide college is not for us.
Correct.
And the band is gaining exposure.
Yes.
Exposure.
Yes.
And tell me about that transition to becoming, or aspiring to be, a full-time band guy.
Yeah.
And what was your inspiration? Something to do?
Sure. For me personally, I never felt like I could make a living off of the band. Like, all the money that we did make during those tours and stuff, that like all went back into the band, all went back into merch or the maintenance of the van. So, I never took all of us, we never took like per diems or anything, all the money that we made was like exclusively spent on the band. Just our own money. I mean, towards like the last 2 or 3 years of Taken, we did start to be able to make enough money to be like, all right, one meal a day would be on the band or whatever. But yeah, I was very cheap from that perspective. So, and I was the one that was controlling most of the money, and no one was really being like, dude, I don't have any money. We can, whatever. So I never had those desires to be the full-time band guy, like barely making any money. So whatever job that I was going to do, I had to either, when I came back home, to be able to like transition right into it, so like that's why I was working at Bionic Records, because anytime I'd be home from tour, I can obviously pick up shifts there.
Yeah.
And then once the job opportunity of the Century Media family started to open up, and I started to talk to them, that was like my first question, where it's like, I'm not stopping touring. But I explained it to them where it's beneficial for me to be on tour because obviously, like, you look at the time, like the successful record labels or the successful independent record labels that were kind of on the up, like, Death Wish and Black Market Activities, like Guy from the Red Chord. It's like, so there's these dudes that are in bands who are
you were the Isaac Brock of
completely
media.
Completely. But
in more than one way.
Right. So I selfishly, I made the argument where it's like, this is beneficial. Like, I'm able to see bands. I'm able to like have, I'm able to have meetings with people. Like, whatever, we go through New York City, I'm able to like, hey, come out to our show and like we can talk about, whatever.
Right.
So they understood that and they were like, we're cool with that. And so they still paid me on tour, which was basically the best thing ever. But it also sucked because, after shows, as opposed to like hanging out, I'd have to like, go back to the hotel or person's place we're staying at and do emails until like 2 or 3 in the morning. So that kind of sucked. But the transition into that it was difficult to have that conversation with my mom to be like, all right, I'm going to quit school because I need to do the band. And I do have this job. So it was like, she was scared because she didn't understand what like working for a record label, like what does that even mean to our parents?
Yes.
No idea. And so she was like, okay, like you're going to do what you're going to do. I can't stop you. But I did make a promise to her. I was like, yo, I'm going to graduate before I'm 30. I promise you that I will get this education. I did.
30?
Before I was 30. Yeah. So, I did make that promise to her because I was like, this, she did understand that this was kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity. Like if I didn't do this now, when would I be able to like recreate that later in my life? So, and I'm not, I can't speak for the rest of the dudes in Taken as far as like wanting to have that be their primary source of income. But I think everybody had that sort of mentality. Like if this were to transition into it, that would be awesome. But no one had like their, right. Like everyone obviously had jobs and like understood that we needed to spend our own money on stuff as opposed to, just siphoning off of merch sales or whatever.
Sounds like a tough way to live.
It was, but just because we were all so excited about all the steps that we were taking, it was just like, well, dude, we got to do what we got to do. And everyone had a job that understood the parameters of what we were trying to do. So that was fortunate.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But then the stars did not align.
The stars did not align. The fateful day of the...
Tell me about the last day of Taken.
Well, the last official day was, we played our last show, obviously, but we knew we were breaking up, like before that, obviously.
Right.
So, like, the actual day when everything went down was, we always practice at our bassist Nick's house on Sundays because he had built this amazingly hot, but amazing, like, work shed. It was like a tough shed that we bought. And, he spent, months outfitting it with, like, soundproofing, and it was an awesome room. So anyways, we would practice over there, and, we'd take breaks or whatever. So, and I distinctly remember, like, you didn't feel weird, like, as far as, like, okay, like, I think something's going to happen this day. I did have a feeling that one of our guitarists, Eric, who had been with us for about 2 years, he didn't like touring. Like, he just was the type, he wasn't built for it.
Yeah.
And his personality didn't suit it. So after we had got home, that was like our most extensive, like 4 months of touring. So it was like, pretty strenuous from just like being out there. So I knew he was going to quit. I just didn't know when that was going to come down the pike. So this was, I want to say it was November, because I think we played our last show like in Marchish or something. I can't remember the time frame really, but we usually we just hung out in Nick's bedroom, like in between sessions or whatever, and we'd play like video games and whatever, shoot the shit. So Eric was like, hey guys, I gotta talk to you. And so in my mind I was already like, all right, who's gonna replace him? Like, who are we looking for? So Eric lays it down, like, I can't do this, like, I just don't enjoy it. And all of us we had already seen the writing on the wall, but so it wasn't a surprise. So Eric was like, okay, cool, like, dude, it sucks, we love to play with you, but like, you gotta do what you gotta do. So then literally, like, I think I was outside Nick's bedroom, Nick was walking out, and our original guitarist Chad was still sitting on the bed, and he was like, hey guys, there's something I want to talk to you about. And that's when like shit got real, where it was like, what?
Wow.
So
You think they were conspiring with one
I have no sense of if they were communicating on, they might have been commiserating like together on tour, be like, oh man, this kind of sucks. But
should phone a friend and find out.
I know. We should bring somebody in. But well, at least the impression that Chad gave was the fact that he was quitting basically because just real life, like I think at the time the girl that he was dating, and this is me just theorizing whether or not this is actually true, is something I've never really hashed out with him, and maybe retrospective, like him looking back on it, he may be able to be like, yeah, that was the reason. But I believe he was getting a lot of pressure from a girl he was dating at the time, not like terrible pressure, like you're a fucking idiot if you keep doing this, but just like, hey, like you have this graphic design career, like you can't do it when you're on the road, and all this other stuff. So I think that was maybe like the voice in his ear that started to get him to think about it more on his own terms. And so once he kind of
it can be miserable
touring,
driving around all day,
it sucks.
No money.
Totally. I mean, it's like for every positive impression that people have
wait, first of all, let me tell you why I ridiculed it. Okay. It was after we toured Russia.
I mean, what the most extensive tour you've done is like, when you went to like
with other bands, never.
Right. You were never. So you are actually a great buffer, because it's like I remember on tour, we always loved to have, another person from one of the bands that we were on tour with in the van, because they would be sort of like, everybody would be on their best behavior.
Right.
And everyone would be like talking to that person and kind of like mixing it up with them, as opposed to the, stupid petty shit that you talk about where it's like, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Or, the best is political discussions in a van, even though it's like, we're all kind of the same mind. It's like anytime it gets on a topic that could be divisive, it's just like, stop fucking talking about that in the van, because this is going to lead to a fist fight.
Right.
But yeah, like you said, not to mention, I mean, touring is not like I said, for every positive impression, there's like 10 things that can back it up that are negative and suck. Yeah. Well, you are like 9 feet tall, and it's not
9 feet tall.
Right.
Don't prefer to be with people.
And the introverts don't make it on tours, and that's just a reality. Yeah. So, and Chad was always like quiet, but he was social. Like he could be around people and not be.
Are you saying I can't be around people?
You choose to be around people when it's convenient for you.
When I'm getting something.
Precisely. Exactly. So once Chad threw down the gauntlet, that's when, I mean, my own mentality was, if we did lose another original member, because as you well know, like our drummer Troy had left, whatever, like a year and a half prior to that. And so Nick, Chad, and I were like, okay, we're the core three. If this changes for us, then obviously we should probably think about wrapping it up. So I remember for like a few days after, it was like just trying to sort out in my head as far as like who can replace who, and how this would look. And I do remember sitting down at a Starbucks with Nick to be like, all right, like let's really try to plan this out. Like Nick was definitely of the mindset of like, dude, we should probably just hang this up. But I was really like, no, like, because we were about to sign like a record deal, about to tour like Japan. There was a lot of stuff that was happening that was like, yo, if we just last for another year and a half, there's shit that,
It'll be fun.
Right. But then after having that discussion with Nick, I was kind of like, he seems pretty defeated. Like I didn't feel like he had this sort of get up and go-ness.
Yeah.
And then like about 2 months later, or maybe a month and a half or so, that's when the drummer that we had at the time was like, yo guys, I can tell like stuff's not happening with us. So I'm going to go ahead and join Name Taken, which was, a nice little twist of fate where it's like, oh, that's funny. Because that band legitimately did tell me at one point that like we got our name from you, not like musically inspired, but being like, oh, okay, like, all the good names are taken. Mm-hmm. Hey, there's our name. So once that kind of happened, then it was like, all right, let's figure out a way to record these last songs and like properly wrap the band up, as opposed to like just kind of disappear.
Enter me into your world.
Enter Monarchy Music Corporation.
Boom.
That's very true. We had it. The vinyl was out for the last show, right? Like we sold it at the last show, I think. I can't remember, but yeah, that's where you entered my life. Some random dude emailing me being like, I would love to start a Hydra Head Records rip-off label. and I would love to put out the Taken EP on vinyl. And I said, I would love that. That's a spectacular idea.
And then you went to my weird apartment.
I did go to your weird apartment. What surprised me most about meeting you is that, like, I just never recognized you from a show. Like, it was one of those things where, because you were such a demanding physical presence, and you are a very unique looking individual.
Whoa.
It's true. Just saying.
Offensive.
You are both of those things
Okay.
that I would have recognized you before, but then when you answered the door, I was like, I've never fucking seen this dude ever. But that's awesome.
The Ryan Gosling of
You just show up to shows, no one knows, but the rumors
Right.
exist
right.
that you were at a show. So, yes, that's where everything happened, where my life turned for the better.
Okay, let's fast forward, Brad.
Okay.
Looking back now,
Yes, I will look back.
I'm glad you went through all that.
Oh, of course.
You wish you would have spent your time becoming a lawyer.
I mean, the once I did get bitten by the musical bug, so to speak, I always knew that I wanted to make a living out of it, but not directly tied up into a band, if that makes sense. Where I was like, okay, I see that there is a way to potentially make money off of this and be able to make a living, but not exclusively, screaming for 40 years of my life, because I knew that that wasn't a sustainable thing, not only physically, but from a career standpoint, spiritually as well. But yeah, so then just the fact that I was able to take those experiences and be able to figure out a way to make money off of it from a professional standpoint, like transition into, working for record labels and being business minded about music. I was glad. I mean, that was literally the only reason that I have pretty much everything in my life, from, my marriage to whatever else, has all stemmed from music and those, humble beginnings of, picking up Fat Records releases and, Victory Records stuff.
Physical Fatness Volume 2.
Yeah, it's a great record. Or Fat Music for Fat People Volume 1.
Yes.
So yeah, but of course, like, I'm very excited that I'm not in any other position, because I couldn't even imagine my life elsewhere.
Where were you born?
Born in Las Vegas, Nevada,
Oh,
1980.
Ugh.
Do you really, do you hate Nevada
I hate Las
or
Vegas.
Vegas?
Actually, I like nice hotel rooms.
Yes.
I like nice things.
Yes.
But I don't like going outside there because it's too hot.
It's very hot. I mean, I look like my experience there was, I'll always have fond memories of that, even though, I mean, I moved to Southern California when I was like 7.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, the limited memories I do have. But I mean, when you're a kid, you don't give a shit about heat. So it's like,
Yeah.
But Vegas is easily, I mean, it's one of the weirdest places on this planet, just because you have such a, it's such a tourist destination mixed in with, the rampant homelessness mixed in with the suburbs. Like, it's just such a weird relationship that the people that live there and are born there have with, like, the Strip and like what people know.
They're very different things.
Totally. And so it's like, yeah, people, anytime I do say that I'm born in Vegas, people are like, no one's born there. People just either like go there to retire or they just go there on vacation. Like, no one's ever actually born there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Au contraire.
Au contraire. I was born there, and yeah, like I said, I lived there up until I was 7.
Moved. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because my parents got divorced when I was about 3 or 4 or so.
Uh-huh.
Dad was fucking around on a million different girls, and then yeah, it is what it is. He
Least favorite state.
I know, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that's. I don't know any other way to explain that away other than that's kind of what he did. But
People will be people.
People will be people, and there was this like a severe legal battle over me as far as like who was going to be the primary custody.
Were you aware of this?
I wasn't aware of it, but I mean, apparently it was like, courtrooms, and like this was a longer process. So it's like my dad was fighting for me, my mom was fighting for me. I mean, I'm extremely thankful that I ended up with my mom, because I think I would be, well, I know I would be a completely different person.
Your stepbrother?
Well, yeah, stepbrothers that I had like with my dad's second marriage were the worst ever.
Who you don't talk to now?
No, terrible.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, this is when I was like 9 and 10, and like, I don't have any concept of like staying in touch with someone.
I know. Was he still when he died, was he still with that wife?
No. He had transitioned into his third wife, which was legitimate and like someone that I wish he would have been married to years and years prior.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so I'm thankful that I ended up in my mom's custody, not taking away anything from my dad, but just that sort of environment that anytime I would visit him in Vegas and like be introduced to his crazy world, it was like, this isn't healthy, bringing me on multiple dates in a day. Like I would go to like miniature golf in the afternoon with one chick, and then in the evening we'd be going to dinner with some other girl, and it was like, this shouldn't be what you're doing when you're like 9 or 10 years old.
Right.
Like, and I can only imagine what it would have been if it was like, continuing, if I was there on a full-time basis. So I'm very glad that I didn't do that.
Yes.
But that, not taking away anything from my dad, because he definitely was a huge part of my life. And even though I was estranged from him for a few years, I did grow close to him, and I did appreciate the sort of real talk that he gave me. Like and again, this shows up his fucked up nature, where he, like, I think at 18, he was like, all right, once you turn 18, I'm going to get you a hooker. We're going to get you laid.
That's what he said?
Straight up. And I mean, and it wasn't it was purely from like an educational standpoint. He's like, I don't want you not knowing what to do around women from that perspective. And
Let's only do that.
I know. And that's whether or not it was an actual joke. Like, I mean, like I didn't end up doing that. Well, I mean, you believe what you want.
Oh, I will.
But he,
I'll draw my own conclusions.
Yeah, you draw your own conclusions. So I mean, I didn't end up doing that, but just like, I mean, the fact that he would even put that out there, I'm just like, there probably has to be some half truth in that, just because, yeah.
If you would have made the move, he would have helped.
Yeah, I do truly believe if I like would have belabored,
yeah, cool,
totally. If I would have been like, actually, yeah, you know what, that's a really good idea. But because of that, like, this sort of straight talk that I am comfortable doing from time to time, it directly comes from him. So I am thankful for that.
Good.
But yeah, Southern California, 07.
Then you went to high school in Orange.
Correct.
Small, tiny Catholic high school.
Lutheran. It was Orange Lutheran, because I went to private schools my entire life, like Christian elementary school, Lutheran junior high school, and then a Lutheran high school. You never went to a private school, right? Yeah.
Went to daycare.
I know. You got brought up in the hard streets of Irvine.
Shout out to Brandon Hamilton.
With your one black friend, Brandon Hamilton.
I miss you.
If you're listening to this podcast right now, drop us an email. But and it wasn't like my parents were, or like my mom specifically, was super religious. She just always liked the idea of small class sizes, and that was obviously how you achieve that.
Yeah, because she's a teacher.
She's a teacher, so she knew what it was like to have 45 students in an English class, and 30 of them don't give a shit about what's happening, and they're getting lost in the system, so to speak. So she
system's fault. Inspire the children.
That's true. It's very difficult. Inspiration comes in many different forms. So
you know about my plan, right?
No, what's your plan?
When I become a billionaire,
okay,
I'm gonna start a school.
Okay.
It's gonna be like X-Men, but
yeah, School for the Gifted, sure.
Well, not necessarily gifted.
Okay.
I will turn them into gifted.
Oh, okay. You will be molding young minds. Will it be a private school that people have to pay a lot of money to attend?
No, free, completely free.
Okay.
And
large student body, like.
I don't know. It's gonna be world leaders, so probably not.
Okay. Obviously there's an interview process in order to get into the school.
Yes.
Okay, got it. That makes sense.
There's going to be a lot of sort of unorthodox teaching styles. I would say the 6th grade final.
Yep.
And by the way, one of the core things is you don't move on until you get all the lessons.
Okay, yeah. You're not just ushered through the system.
Exactly.
Right.
One of the core things is you're going to have to, at the end of 6th grade, just like I was.
Sure.
Just like me.
Right. Direct inspiration.
Yeah. You're going to have to ride the bus.
Oh.
And plan it out by yourself.
Okay.
All day.
Okay. Yeah. With like certain like you have to get to these 3 destinations within a day.
Yes.
By taking public transit.
Yeah.
Got it.
My biggest voyage was Long Beach to Orange County, so that'll probably be it.
That's a good voyage.
And I think maybe sophomore year will be cross country.
Okay. Bus cross country. That could be terrifying for a 14 or 15-year-old.
Yeah.
But
I made it.
Throw them at the deep end.
Yeah. Look at me.
I know. You're a shining example of what a human should be.
That's right.
But the so that my mom always wanted small class sizes, so that's why I went through all those, Christian and Lutheran schools. And
You like school?
um, I
You like stuff?
this so yeah, I mean, I had great experiences in school. Like, I definitely don't look back on my high school years and like, oh fuck that, I didn't go to any dances. Like, I totally did all that. I was part of the high school experience. Like, yearbook, basketball, golf, dances. Like, I did all of that. But
Yearbook class?
I was the yearbook photographer, junior and senior year.
Is it like 13 pages long?
No, well, I mean, we had, let's see, I think our entire school was like just shy of 1,000 people. It's like
Oh,
eight.
okay.
Yeah, it wasn't like,
There were a few people.
yeah, it wasn't like, 7 people a class. But so I mean, school, I really didn't care that much about. Like, I was able to put forth an okay amount of effort and be able to get B's and A's. So, I mean, I think my GPA was like 3.1 or something.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I was really nose to the grindstone. Like, I got to get straight A's in order to get admitted to a college. Like, I just,
Do you regret that?
I mean, I regret not getting more out of it, as far as like, I applied myself in the subjects I cared about, which was English and like history. But it's like math, I always had an aversion to, just because it was primarily because all of my teachers were totally shitty people. Like, I just didn't like them. But yeah, so I definitely wish that I could have, and like certain random things where it's like my wife is a product of, the public schooling system. And it's like, I've literally never read one word of Shakespeare, like, just because that was not part of like our,
You're not missing.
people would argue that, and I would agree with you because I've witnessed certain Shakespearean plays and I don't understand what's happening. But so yeah, there's certain things where I'm just like, wow, I really missed out on this cultural touchstone. Like, I'm aware of it now, but just on from the outside looking in perspective.
She like chemistry.
Well, it was just never something I was interested in. Like, it never spoke to me deeply. Like, it really was all about the sort of creative element that always kind of, the creative mixed with the sort of like entrepreneurialness of what I was doing. Because I mean, like my junior and senior year in high school, it's like every summer I was touring, like with Taken. So
Really?
yeah, I mean, that's when our first tour was, our junior year. And that was our amazing,
Montreal.
exactly, that was our amazing, let's see, I think we were out for about 5 weeks, 4 or 5 shows. It was incredible. It was just a vacation. But
A lot of that.
it is I mean, driving wasn't even like, we didn't even think about it at the time, just because it's, you're with your friends and it doesn't matter. But so yeah, I never cared about science from that perspective. So it wasn't something that I regret
Yeah.
not paying attention, or I paid attention to, but it didn't speak to me deeply. So
Fair enough.
yeah. So, but I'm like I said, I loved high school. I definitely was what I would define as a dabbler, where it's like, I had my core group of friends that were sort of, they were all just random. It's like dudes that were, it's like I hung out with Troy, who was, played in Taken, and Nick, who played in Taken as well.
You went there too?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the only reason that Nick was really like into music in the first place was because, Troy and I started taking to shows and stuff. But yeah, the people that we hung out with were just like these random group of dudes. Like, there was one that was like an artist and just, a goofball. So I wouldn't define them as like outcasts, like from the typical sort of, they sit alone, like they sit in the boy, even though we did sit in the locker, or the boys' locker room occasionally for lunch because we thought we were cool. We had our own like little select group of people that only had to be invited in. That's pretty nerdy. But at the same time, like, I was able to also talk to the sort of popular football players, and like, I was admitted to that crew. Like, they weren't like, oh, this dude is really, really weird, like, we don't want to hang out with him. Yeah. And partially just because the school was small. But yeah, I enjoyed my experience in high school, and I definitely no, which is odd, because you would think by this, I mean, the school's been open now for 20 some odd years, so you think by this time someone would have popped out. I mean, I occasionally get those like alumni letters, and it's like the most exciting thing that people do. It's like, oh, they're like, some large government job or something, or they're working for the city here, or
Yeah.
there isn't much. And I mean, and there hasn't been really, we've been really good at sports, but there hasn't been anybody that's like transitioned to the pros or anything like that, which is strange because the football team, like, has won CIF multiple times. And so it's weird, but I don't know. Maybe people just aren't allowed to be famous when they come out of there.
Okay, Ray.
Yeah.
Well, now you've become a man.
I have become a man. I view it like this, to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
I view it as, because I still feel essentially like the same person I was when I was, 16, 17 years old. Because I'm essentially doing the same shit. Like music, band stuff, like that.
Yeah. So my next question, when are you going to grow up?
Yeah. Interesting question. I think this is something that is I've had discussions with a few people on this podcast about the idea that this generation is of stunted adolescence, where it's like, basically I think people between the ages of about like, I don't know, maybe 25 and like 35, this generation of people who've obviously been exposed to independent culture and like have, gone to shows or whatever, like, whether it's like, yeah, whether it is like shows and music or whether it's like independent art, like comic books, like whatever. There's all these inroads to sort of a sidestep to mainstream culture. And because of that, because people become so obsessed with that and like, wash themselves in it like on a daily basis and become obsessed with it, that's their reality. And like as they grow, that still is their reality. Like whether or not that they become less involved with it, they're still identify with it. And so I think that a simple answer to your question as far as am I going to grow up anytime soon? I don't see that happening. Like as far as like my tastes and like am I going to go to shows when I'm like, 50? Probably not. I'll maybe go to, special musical events.
Right.
But, I'm not going to go to the local all ages club and be the weird dude in the back that's watching, a new hardcore band. Like, I just don't think that that's something I'll enjoy at that time in my life. I could be wrong, but, but the idea of like the stereotypical idea of like growing up and like having those mile markers in your life where it's like, our parents, like, okay, here's my career. Here's that signpost that I have moved past, and now I am considered somewhat of an adult or whatever.
Right.
Like, I think those are so movable now. Like I said, just from that generation of stunted adolescence where it's like, there are some people where you have to do adult things. You can't be a total fuck up and be like, I'm not going to do my taxes. Joke. But you know what I'm saying, where it's like they're not going to be interested in doing those things.
Right, there are added responsibilities that must be maintained.
Right.
But you can supplement.
Right, and you can still grow as a person and do adult shit, but not be bogged down by adulthood, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be interesting, like how like that movie that came out that I know that we talked about at one point, like The Other F Word, like that punk parent documentary, where it's like, you have people like Lars Fredrickson from Rancid, who it's just like, he was never be like, the concept of him being a father and like doing that when he got older was like, what? I'm going to be fucking dead by him like 35, and he's not, and he has to exist in this world and like reconcile what he thought back then with what he's experiencing currently. And so I think this generation is going to be really interesting. You're going to see people who are going to not be, or who are going to get married in their mid to late 30s or mid to late 40s, people who are going to like prolong that, whatever, that experience of a relationship and, be like, well, I'm not interested in getting married in like my mid 20s, even though I did. I never thought that was going to be a part of my life when I was like 20, so it'll be interesting, but no, I don't think I'm ever going to grow up from that perspective. I hope you don't either, Scott. Don't lose that little sparkle in your eye.
I think I heard you.
No, you have. Well, you're
born 93 years old.
You're what I like to call an old soul.
Okay.
Your interests lie outside of the world of children, which
the world of children. Oh,
you know what I'm saying? Like I mean, you're interested in childlike things, but you're not interested in a lot of the, the drama that makes a music scene go. You can peek into it and enjoy it from that perspective, but you're not involved in it. You're from the outside looking in a way.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, Ray, you have a few things you're involved in now.
I do.
I would say you were involved in the Santa Fe Music Festival.
You were correct in that assumption.
The No Sleep Records establishment.
Yes.
Along with your day job as a passionate animal rights activist.
Yes, I would agree with some of that.
What do you disagree with?
No. I mean the word activist obviously just has so many negative connotations. Like passion does not have any negative connotations as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
I mean, I'm an activist, I guess, by just my lifestyle, but I'm not a protesty person where I'm not going to get out on the street corner with a sign and tell people to do things because that was never something I was interested in. There's a need for that,
right?
Just not me.
Okay.
So yeah, but those are all things that I'm involved in because I think also that's symptomatic of what a lot of people do, like within independent music and culture in general. Like you're not only involved in one thing for the most part. People, whether it's like they've got a million business ideas or a million, they have to be involved in like all these different aspects and facets of whatever culture it is. I think that's people totally do that, and I think that's obvious. There's obviously an issue with that, like the whole saying of jack of all trades but master of none, like never having the focus to just do one thing.
Yeah.
And I totally like that's I agree wholeheartedly with that, and I think that I'm not good at one particular thing. I'm all right at a lot of things. I'm like I can get by on a lot of these things, and I can, through my shared experiences of doing so many different things, it helps all those things continually like kind of bump up like my level of for putting it in video game terms, I'm leveling up constantly. But
as an overall character.
Right. But it may not be like I am, 100% proficient at this one thing because that's what I've just focused my life on,
In nature, you'd survive.
That's what I'd like to think.
Yeah.
10,000 hours of doing one thing sounds interesting when you're 12, maybe. I don't even know if that sounds interesting when you're 12, but becoming an expert at something, like it just, I don't know. I just never had that laser-like focus to be like, this is the one thing I'm going to be dedicated to and committed to. Besides like music, where it's just like, I know that I want to always do that.
So I have a larger question.
Please.
So you've expressed your interest in this sort of niche culture.
Sure.
Do you think about things larger than that? Our societal problems.
Sure.
Or the economy.
Sure. That is because my introduction to independent music was through honestly, like a band like Rage Against the Machine, that was huge for me because
my classmate.
Right. Rage Against the Machine and Propaganda are two bands that like literally cracked my head open as far as showing like, oh wow, like shit isn't all right with the world. So I think because of that introduction and always being interested in like what is happening outside of, like you said, a very niche and insular world, because obviously whatever happens in the real world will eventually trickle down to whatever niche you're involved in. And I do think that the concept and idea of taking the values that you learn within whatever community you're a part of and applying it to the real world, like I distinctly remember, when I was going to OCC, like taking communication classes or whatever, and so it's like the real touchy-feely ones where they were like,
socialist,
which is fine for you.
I get
a job. But anyways, so getting up in front of the class and like introducing yourself and like what you're into.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I was, mentioning that like I'm straight edge and like, going to shows, and it's like once you name a few of those things, people be like, oh fuck that, like that guy's terrifying, like closed-minded and whatever, like a lot of stereotypes that you would have about a person who is into that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But once I did show them, like I guess kind of what a real person can be like while still having those things in their life, it totally just blew their minds. Where they were just like, oh, you're not gonna beat me up because I have a beer, or you're not going to think that me liking whatever pop music is on the radio is like the stupidest choice that you've ever made. So it's like taking whatever experiences you have in your community and like applying it to the real world, like, and opening their views up will only help, not only just like from their own personal experience, but hopefully on a societal level where it all kind of like, it'll build on top of one another, because you'd be like, oh, okay, using music and independent culture and saying like, okay, you don't need to, step on everybody's back in order to, make yourself, whatever, $100 more. And like applying that to obviously people that, looking at what the way that our financial system is set up. And it's like survival of the fittest and capitalism. I've got no problem with capitalism.
The way it should be.
Right. Which is, I knew you were going to say that at any point. But yeah, being able to apply those things to be like, okay, maybe this doesn't need to be the, end all be all way of how I obtain, my wealth, where it's like, I will, at all costs, I will walk over people and, that'll be my only goal. Anybody else that gets in the way will obviously be crushed, like how you're going to make your millions. But so yes, the simple answer is I am interested in stuff outside of this world, and while I may not be as well versed as other people are, I still try to pay attention to everything that's happening. And my father gives me no choice by continually badgering me about Republican values.
Big Romney fan?
And I don't think he's necessarily a big fan of Romney. I think he's just a fan of, not no government, but much less government, and how the entitlements of all of the social systems that are set up are the destruction of our society from, not so much Medicare, but, Social Security, welfare, all that type of stuff. So I get that every time I come over to his house, and I'm just like, see what your boy's doing in the White House? I'm just like, oh, I can't even have this discussion with you. Because it's not a discussion. It's a
lecture.
He's talking about it from the way that he perceives the world to be through his, Fox News purview, because that's the world that he exists in.
Yeah.
So it's like, can't even have a discussion with you about this. So I've got no choice but to be aware.
You love debate.
I tried years ago, like maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, just really trying to like, all right, remove like whatever rhetoric and party lines that may exist. Because me personally, I believe that most people should be issue oriented when it comes to politics. Like,
shout out other podcasts.
Exactly. Ronan Kaufman. You should be picking out what is important to you and where you stand on an individual basis, as opposed to this huge blanket statement of like, oh, I am a Democrat. And
it seems a little ridiculous, doesn't it?
It totally does.
You have to follow everything.
Right. And there's nuances to everything. So it's like, while you may be fiscally more right-winged, where it's just like, well, I do believe capitalism works, and I do believe that, entrepreneurship, all these things exist, like, and they are healthy as long as they're done in an appropriate manner. But then swinging back the other way, where it's just like, there does need to be governmental the FDA needs to exist. Like, we need governmental bodies protecting our society, because otherwise, will the food that we eat be even more polluted than we already have? So, yeah, I do believe that people need to be less focused on what party they're involved with and more focused on individual issues and what is important to them. That'd be my if I was running for president, that would be my platform, and I wouldn't get elected for anything. No, you have to be divisive.
Right.
Yes.
Take a stand, right?
Draw those we're, like Stephen Colbert says, we are at war, pick a side.
All right, Ray. I have a little controversial question.
Please, I love controversy.
No, it's not.
Okay.
What is something at 32?
Yeah, almost 32.
32 years old.
Yeah.
What is something now that you believe that you didn't at age 25?
Let's see, at age 25.
What is something that's eye-opening?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like the huge experience of having a kid, like that totally cracks your world open as far as.
You don't plan for it; it just happens.
Yeah,
There's
just
a lot of things.
Totally, just like, oh God, I got to get furniture and like all this other stuff. I mean, I think this happens to a lot of people, but obviously, like as you grow older, you become mellower with whatever it is. Like, when I was in high school, when I first started claiming straight edge and being completely annoying and overt about it, would I have done that? Would I do that now? Like, no, I wouldn't wear X's to school every day, and I wouldn't, pee in the punch at a high school party. Like, those are things that I look back on, and it's like, I'm glad I did that at the time, I guess. Like, maybe not the pee in the punch thing, but having those experiences like obviously led me to be like, okay, I need to be more reasonable about my views and not like beat people up with it, because they're going to look at me and be like, I don't want to be like him. Like that is not leading by example. That doesn't seem like an appealing lifestyle, because that's what I always found, like looking where I'm at today and then like what I have learned, where it's like whatever you're doing and whatever you're into, and like if you're trying to convince someone of something, you need to make it like be appealing. Like plain and simple, people are going to be interested in fun lifestyles, like in ease of transition into whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's like politically, you know, your diet, whatever. You need to make these things as easy for people to understand and kind of transition into, even though some of these things may be difficult. But from the outward perspective, you need to make it be like, oh, okay, like that seems reasonable. I can do that.
Right.
So I think that's definitely one thing that I have learned, where it's like from, you know, my early days, where it's just like you didn't need to have these not so much firm lines, because I do believe that especially when you're high school, you have to align yourself with this identity in some way, shape, or form, because otherwise you're just going to be like adrift in nothing, you know, like Scott Arnold, which is fine. Well, you had you know, you had purple hair and wallet chain, so it was okay. You were identified to an independent subculture.
There's misinformation.
I know. But
the wallet chain was tucked directly into my back pocket, purely for security,
purely safety reasons. Yeah,
I was riding my motorcycle.
Right, totally, or your bike.
Yeah,
because you probably weren't riding a motorcycle at the time. But yeah, so I think that's the one thing that I have learned, where over time you definitely do, like, whether you directly know it, like the people that you surround yourself with and the people that observe your own life will, you know, sometimes be directly influenced by that. Be like, oh, okay, like, you know, like whatever. You, Scott, like how you've influenced my life as far as like just the, you know, the way you are, the way that, you know, I know that I need to treat people differently. Like I know being loud and touching you isn't the way it doesn't work with you. And so it's like having those different perspectives, and then, you know, being able to like learn from others based on the fact that, you know, you don't draw these divisive lines to where it's like, you know, oh, I don't think I can be friends with Scott because he's so different from me, you know. So it's like being able to like temper all that and move forward and actually learn from something, as opposed to like closing yourself off from those experiences. Because that's what I definitely was doing that in high school, where it's just like there were times where it's like I wouldn't get to know a person because they, you know, did this one thing. Yeah. I mean, obviously there are certain instances where it's like, okay, you're a white supremacist, probably not interested in hanging out with you, but those are extreme examples, obviously. Yeah. So you've taught me, Scott. I appreciate your teachings.
What are 3 pieces of advice?
The advice
that you would give little Raymond today with your experiences?
Yes.
Yes. What would you tell him about how to live his life?
How to live his life. Well, I obviously have thought about this a lot.
Okay. Think of me, little Raymond.
Okay. Which would be terrifying if you were this large at 16 months old.
He may not be yours. We've all thought that.
Yes, we all have thought that. I guess spinning off on that point, what you were saying, or what you asked, what I've learned, you know, looking back, you know, 31 versus 25. The idea, this has especially been true over the past like 2 years of my life, where it's like I've said yes more often than I've said no, as far as just like different experiences are concerned. So always be open to new possibilities, challenges, even though that may seem like weird initially or scary in some way, shape, or form. You saying yes to something that may be scary might open you up for 2 or 3 other things that are easy for you to do and are awesome and are a great experience. But the only reason they were afforded to you is because you said yes to this original thing. So say yes to a lot of different things within reason, obviously. Because obviously if you get offered drugs, you should probably say no to that.
Well,
yes. Debatable in Scott's world. And then being the age-old cliche.
Wait, is this number 2?
This is number 2.
Okay.
Moving on, number 2. So yeah, number 1, saying yes and being open to experiences. Number 2, putting, like, literally, this is the oldest cliche in the book, but putting yourself in someone else's shoes.
Absolutely.
What's always benefited me is knowing where other people come from. Like, whether it's professionally or whether it's, like, obviously, like, how you are with friends, where it's like, if you don't have any idea where it is that they're coming from or, like, how hard a job is, you're going to be a dick. Like, you're going to be expecting something that you maybe not have communicated clearly to either a friend or a coworker. And you're like, hey, why don't they do this thing, because for whatever reason, whether it's, like I said, executing, a piece of work professionally, or whether it's like, oh, why is my friend treating me like this? Well, maybe it's because I wasn't clear with them. Like, you always have to put yourself, why are they treating me this way? Or why is our relationship strained, or whatever. And the moment that you do that, you just receive so much clarity. And, like, once you actually do understand, like, as you grow older and be like, okay, I know why this person is the way that they are, and I know how we can get along and we can have a, fruitful relationship. And it's only because you put yourself in whatever it is that they experience and taken the time to know them as an individual. And this can transition perfectly into my third point, which is be genuine. Above all, the thing that, whether or not people like me or dislike me, the fact that I've always tried to be as genuine as I possibly could, whether it's, like, how I express myself musically, through this podcast, professionally, as friends, whatever. I want to be as genuine as I possibly can, and, like, let you know why it is that I'm doing what I'm doing. Because I think that a lot of people are tripped up when they go through life, and, like, the worst thing, especially when it comes from, like, the music industry, like, the idea of networking, that word in and of itself, like, is that you want to throw up when you hear that, because you imagine, like, a hotel conference room and, like, hey, network with these 30 people. Yeah, it's the fucking worst thing ever. So, but there's a huge difference where it's like, if you approach an event like that, where you're just like, okay, I'm going to network and I'm going to find these people. But if you're like, all right, I'm going to meet 2 people from this shitty event and actually, like, get to know them as an individual and, like, break away the layers of, like, oh, what is it that you do for work? Oh, you're a supplier of, erasers for pencils. And it's like, how the fuck did you end up there? Like, once you go past that, then you start to know.
Everything's interesting.
Everybody has a story.
Right.
I mean, some of them may be less interesting than others, but you should take the time to know those people, because they're going to feel, no matter what, if someone takes the time to get to know you, you're going to feel more personal connection with them. And it's like, say they do come to you for something professionally, or need, I need help moving on Saturday, whatever. You're going to want to do that because you're like, they're cool. Like, they actually took the time to get to know me. So be genuine, and, like, be genuine in the way that you're interacting, because it's like, you've met a million of these people where it's like, they shake your hand, or like, oh, like, what do you do? And, like, especially, like, I'm sure when you were doing the record label and you were experiencing so much crazy shit, like, meeting Rick Rubin and all this other stuff, where it's like, you were meeting people that wanted something from you.
Right.
And I'm sure if any of those people took, like, 2 minutes to, like, know you as a 19-year-old kid who were, scared shitless and be like, what the fuck is happening? Like, you probably would have been like, well, that person's kind of cool. Like,
but I would counter that by going back to point number 2. And recognizing that everyone has their motivations. And
very
as
true.
soon as you put 2 and 2 together and realize what people are going for, how you can help them, how you can help you.
Right. Yeah, no, they definitely interplay with one another. But then obviously, like, and those people, if they are genuine about what they want from you, then like you said, it's much easier to be like, okay, like, I get it. We are going to be professional with one another.
Our goals align.
Totally. And then you can move on from there. But yeah, those are nice tenets that I would like to have Raymond take into his future life.
Okay, great.
Yes.
I'd like to tell Raymond a few things too.
Okay, please.
I want you to work hard in high school.
Okay.
It's not going to be fun. You're going to have to miss a few things. But
yes.
Once you get that scholarship to public school, it's going to make life a lot easier.
It will.
27 years old with these college loans. It's an albatross around your neck.
Yeah. I have a college savings plan for him already, but realistically,
By the time he's in college, it's going to be $8.4 million.
totally.
I think that concludes our podcast.
I agree completely. Thank you, Scott, for
You're welcome.
flipping the tables. I hope you enjoyed it in some way, shape, or form.
It was a miserable experience.
Okay, good. I'm glad. And there you have it, my friends. Well, you got to know me a little bit better, and here's to another 25 or 50 or 150 episodes. And big thanks to my friend Scott for obviously doing this. And big thanks to propertyofzach.com. Check it out. You will not be disappointed. And tune in next week for other awesome shenanigans. All right?